Good evening. Welcome, councillors. And before we go into the agenda, I'll come on to the housekeeping in a moment, but I thought it really nice if I could ask you to introduce yourselves, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Andrew Garrett, Councillor Andrew Garrett, Councillor for Parkhurst and Honeyhill. For those who don't know, I've been on this authority for 9 years now, and as you can see, I'm the Vice Chair of this committee.
I'm Councillor Ed Blake, Ventnor and St Lawrence ward member, and I have the least amount of time between the experiences of being a child than any other councillor.
Hi, I'm Becca Cameron, councillor for Freshwater South, and I've just been a councillor for 1 year now.
Hi, I'm Councillor Hayward for Nettleston and Seaview, and this is a new role for me and my first committee meeting, which I'm looking forward to. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Councillor Newton, Robert Newton, Sandown North, newly elected. It's my first committee meeting.
Hi, my name is Councillor Tony Raff. I represent Wootton Bridge, and it's completely new for me. New start.
Hi, I'm Councillor Debbie Conley. My ward is Freshwater North and Yarmouth, and this is my first committee meeting for Children's Services, Education and Skills.
Hello, my name is Jenny Guthrie and I'm the co-chair of the Parent Carer Forum.
Good afternoon, my name is Lawrence Keynes. I'm the Childcare Sufficiency Officer for the Council.
Hello, I'm Anna Clark and I'm the Principal Social Worker for Children's Services.
Good evening, I'm Kay Jones and I'm the Service Director for Children's Social Care.
Evening, I'm Ruth Hales, Service Lead for Contextual Safeguarding and Youth Justice Service.
Good evening, I'm Jay Kennett, Service Manager for Strategic Development.
Good evening, I'm Beth Dyer, I'm the Acting Service Director for Education, Inclusion and Access.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ashley Whitaker. I'm the Director of Children's Services for the Council.
Afternoon, I'm Matt Drake, the Legal Advisor to the committee.
Evening, councillors. Many of us have met already. My name's Simon Wiggins, Corporate Governance, and I shall be advising the Chair on any procedural matters regarding the Constitution this evening.
Oh, and finally, my name is Kat Bolter. I am the Democratic Services Officer and I will be taking the minutes for this evening's meeting.
Thank you all. The meeting is being recorded and the cameras are in the room. We have a long agenda to get through this evening. So I would do my best to keep you all to time, and I would really appreciate it if everyone could help me as a new chair. First things first, a little bit of housekeeping. So this is the fire procedure in the council chamber this evening. In case of an emergency, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of staff. So we are going to start with, you can see we've got a large agenda tonight. So we're going to start on the minutes. No, you need to do, sorry. Oh, the substitutes. Thank you. Thank you. So are there any apologies this evening?
No, I believe all the committee are here. Just wanted to introduce, we've got Isaac sitting over the side there. He's a student completing some work experience, so he is just here to observe the meeting tonight.
Thank you. So we're going to come on to the minutes of the meeting for the 5th of March, and I'm sure all members have read the minutes thoroughly. I would just like to say that Councillor Bradin would have accepted the minutes unofficially. I have personally read the minutes and watched the last chair, and I'm happy with the minutes. And so I will ask if everyone is happy with them. I would take a vote if you are. Okay. And somebody to propose them?
No, that's
It.
we've done.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Lovely, take that off my notes so I know next time. Thank you. So I'm going to sign the minutes, is that?
Yeah, so if you could just
Thank you.
No?
Thank you very much. So on the next part of the agenda, which is declaration of interest, are there any members to declare? So we're going to go on to the public questions, and we've got a few this evening. So I will start with number one, which is a question from the SEND Parent and Carers Forum, and I believe that you're going to read out your question. Thank you.
Thank you. The Isle of Wight has historically and currently struggled to recruit specialised roles within children's services. Given the success of the submitted SEN Reform Plan Year 1 relies heavily on experts at hand, how does the committee plan to financially and strategically support the recruitment and retention of professionals required as part of these SEN reforms?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. So I'm going to respond. The committee recognises that recruitment and retention of specialist SEND professionals is a real and long-standing challenge on the island. The SEND reform plan has therefore been designed not to rely on recruitment alone, but on a whole system approach. Firstly, the experts at hand model is jointly commissioned with the Integrated Care Board, meaning workforce planning and investment is aligned across education, health and care rather than operating in silos. Secondly, delivery is based on a phased workforce expansion over 3 years, including targeted growth in key roles such as educational psychology and therapies, alongside local training, pathways to build a sustainable workforce pipeline. An example recently is the successful recruitment of 3 new educational psychology assistants to join the local authority team on the 1st of September 2026. Thirdly, the model is specifically designed to reduce reliance on hard to recruit roles by deploying specialist expertise through coaching, consultation and outreach so that Main Street settings are better equipped to meet need earlier. Finally, this is supported by a clear financial strategy, including joint commissioning with the ICB, reducing agency reliance and reinvesting savings from high costs, placements into local capacity. In summary, the approach combines joint commissioning, realistic workforce growth, and systems redesigned to ensure year 1 delivery is achievable and sustainable over time. Do you have any other questions?
So I could just ask what the committee would state, or is there anything that the committee would state that they will commit to enable officers to be able to achieve that?
Can I pass that to you, Mr. Whittaker? Or is it the op? Yes, please.
So what we will be doing is making sure that the committee are fully aware of the needs of children on the island and the need for those needs to be met through specialist support as required. And not only will that be included within the forthcoming budget discussions within the council, but importantly, we'll also be raising it at senior level with our colleagues in the Integrated Care Board, who share the lead statutory responsibility for special educational needs and disability with the council. The third element I would add to it is that there is additional funding going into schools through what's called the Inclusive Mainstream Fund, which is another pot of money which government has given directly to schools to support the implementation of the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Reform. And we'll be working with schools to make sure that that money is used to best effect to upskill the wider workforce and bring in additional specialism as required.
Can I call a point of order, please? Can you confirm that that is the committee's opinion? You said at the beginning that the committee opinion is that does all the committee agree with that, or is that an officer's response or a chairman's response? Just for clarity, please.
If you could just give me a minute, please. I couldn't hear you actually, but if you can just give me a minute, I'll come back and give.
Chair, if I can just give procedural advice and then you can make your own interpretation on the advice that I give. When a councillor raises a point of order, it is usual for the chair to then ask as to which procedural rule or matter of law the councillor believes to have been breached. That would be my suggestion back to you as chair on the procedure in regard of a point of order and how that is dealt with.
So I believe, Councillor Love, you have a question that you've submitted in writing, which I will read or yet later. But because unprecedented number we've got of questions this evening from the public and members, I'm going to decline to answer that, but quite happy to take that on board and provide an answer at a later date, unless you would like one of the officers to answer you.
Thank you, Chair, for trying to respond to that. Whilst I accept what the officers said, it's usual for us to be able to challenge these sorts of answers. It was a very simple bit that I was asking, is that agreed by all of the committee, the response, or is it agreed by officers? But thank you, and I'm not going to dwell on it. I just wanted to be clear to try and help you, is that when we say it's a response from the committee, all of the committee must have agreed to that response in order to submit it. But thank you. I won't draw it out any further than that.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Got another question from the public. And this is a written question from Rachel Richards. I'll read it out because I don't think she's not in the public. Thank you. The report to this meeting on school place planning includes references to past and proposed reductions in PAN at Ireland primary schools, yet does not inform committee members about the detrimental impact on primary school pupils of PAN reductions, which have been evidenced by head teachers and governors to this committee previously, particularly where there is a partial form of entry, not a multiple of 30 pupils. How will this committee ensure that members are fully informed of the possible likely consequences of decisions to address excess surplus capacity by this committee? So I respond to that. The purpose of this report is to provide councillors with an update on the current position in respect to school place planning across the island. Should the committee resolve to instruct officers to progress the recommendations outlined within the report, it is anticipated that any subsequent reporting or decision-making stage would present the full range of relevant information to councillors. This would include a comprehensive assessment of the impacts associated with any proposed changes, including reductions in published admission numbers, PAN, and the implication for pupils, schools and communities. This further detail will ensure that councillors are fully informed on both the potential and likely consequences of decisions taken to address surplus capacity, which includes those relating to partial forms of entry and the educational and organisational considerations that have previously been raised by school leaders and governing bodies. And if you all don't mind, I'm going to have a drink. Okay, now we have another question.
Chair,
So
point of
written-
order on this question, on the procedural rule 13, please. This question is from a member of public called Simon Richards to you specifically. That the answer has been given from in first person from what can only be assumed as Councillor James Whelan, and on behalf of Reform Group, from what we can see, despite the fact that the question is written to you directly, and it within the question asked for the committee's opinion on things. So I just wish to get your clarity on that, please.
It's not only written by Councillor Whelan, it's actually written by me too.
Okay, so it just I'm confused by its use of first person throughout the question, if that is the case.
Is it not supposed to be a public question time?
It's a public question from Simon Richards. And so as it is a public question, thank you, Councillor Love, I will read the answer. Our priority is not the question. So from Simon Richards to Councillor Freeman. Reducing the surplus of primary school places has been a significant element of the Isle of Wight Council strategy to improve educational outcomes for pupils and financial efficiencies for schools over the past few years. However, the Council's unwillingness to accept officer recommendation in the past few years has resulted in both educational outcomes and financial efficiencies getting worse, not better. Given that several councillors expressed their opposition to school closures during the recent election campaign, what is the committee's alternative strategy to achieve an improvement in both educational outcomes and financial efficiency if proposals for the school closures are not supported? The response from Councillor Whelan and Councillor Freeman. Our priority is not closing schools. Our priority is improving education. The facts are clear. Educational outcomes on the Isle of Wight remain below the national average across a number of key measures, including Key Stage 2 and GCSE performance. That isn't good enough for our children or our communities. The island has one of the highest rates of elective home education in England. Around 690 children, around 4.1 of school-aged children are currently being educated at home. And those numbers have been rising, leaving a huge deficit in the funding provided by the DOE. That tells us something important. Many parents have understandably lost confidence in the education system. Winning back that confidence is our priority. The Reform UK group wants parents to feel that their local school is the best place for their child to learn and thrive. Education is the #1 priority in our corporate management plan because it affects everything else. It affects children's life chances, the skills available to local employers, our ability to attract investment, and ultimately the island's economy. We want our residents to have confidence in our economy to continue to have children. We want our businesses to have the ability to recruit the best people for the job, and that individual to have confidence that their children will receive the best education. I'm not starting with a predetermined answer about individual schools. We will follow the evidence, work with the schools, be transparent, and work with parents and communities, and make the decision that put children's education first. Success will be measured not by the number of schools we have, but by the quality of education of our children that our children receive. I have total confidence in Councillor Freeman, the committee and the team at Children's Services and Education to deliver. And I would just like to make a point, if I may. Yes, it's come, the reply from Group Leader James Whelan and myself, but I'm sure the committee will, think about what I've said as an answer and the importance of education for our children, being transparent as we go forward in the future. Thank you.
Chair, I haven't had my point of order resolved. I'd like to say that this, personally for myself, this answer doesn't represent my view as a committee member. But so this was a response that was it was a question directed to you as chair and you as chair only. So I'm still struggling to understand how this answer has been generated, given that the procedural rule 13 hasn't been followed correctly.
Chair, again, I can only offer my advice. The question was put to the chair of the committee, and it is for the chair of the committee to provide the response, because that's the question that who it was put to. How that response was formulated is within your gift. I understand that you were provided with the draft response from wherever it came, and therefore the response has been given in your name. In regard to Councillor Blake's point about the procedural rules, again, I can only offer my advice. I offer nothing more than that, and obviously refer to you as chair. But paragraph 2.161 of the Constitution does say that the ruling of the chair of the council or any such other person duly presiding, which would be yourself in this instance, after taking advice from the monitoring officer or any other officer nominated by the monitoring officer as to the construction or application of this Constitution or as to the proceedings of the council, shall not be challenged at any meeting of the council. So obviously the ball rests in your court about how you handle Councillor Blake's inquiry and your interpretation of his question and your response.
So, Councillor Blake, I'm sorry that you feel that way, that the replies come just from two people. You probably do know that questions are put forward to the chair and replies or answers are written. So I can't give you any more information than I've given you here. And I know by looking at you, you want more from me. Is there a sort of specific question you want us to answer or the officers to answer?
Well, Chair, I'm just confused as to why a question directed to you has to be answered by Councillor Whelan and yourself. Why can't you answer the question given that the question is directed to you? That's my query. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to answer that. I did write this answer as a new councillor and new chair and lead of the Children's Services. By writing the answer, I wanted it checked, which it has been done by Democratics, and also the chair of my party, I wanted him to read that. So I think we're not going to carry on with that, but thank you for your question.
That raises more questions than answers, but thank you.
Hello, Isaac. I understand you've got a question for us and you'd like to read that out.
Thank you, Chair. As a young person at a school on the Isle of Wight who is interested in sport, I feel there are few opportunities on the island outside of school to pursue sport excellence compared to sport opportunities for young people on the mainland. My question is, what is the Council and the Children's Services Education and Skills Committee doing or planning to do about creating more out-of-school sport activities and opportunities for young people like me?
Thank you for your question, Isaac. I'll respond to that. The island is very fortunate to have a variety of sports clubs and facilities offering a range of activities for young people. The council acknowledges the importance and value of sport and works in partnership to try to improve sporting access and opportunity. I'm going to give you some examples of the work that's included. We're working in partnership with Sporting Ireland, which is a multi-agency community partnership, to establish an online new website that promotes sports clubs and the opportunities they offer to young people. collaborating with sports clubs so a new database is created and then promoted. This database will highlight the club's location, its competitive opportunities and activities for young people. The council works closely with governing bodies of sport on new funding opportunities to improve sports facilities on the island. The council also supports 60 young people who have been supported by Whitelink Travel, the council leisure services for gym access, and a number of smaller support agencies for providing physio, nutrition advice. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your question. Isaac, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I do not.
Thank you very much. We carry on with the questions. We have another one that was addressed to Councillor Cameron. Councillor Cameron, would you like to read out the question?
Written question from Barbara Jarman to Councillor Rebecca Cameron. Many people in our community, including myself included, are concerned at the exceptionally high level of electrically home educated children on our island and the quality of education they may receive, and the education qualifications which result to fit them for life. Question: where is the progress reported in understanding of why the Isle of Wight continues to have unusually high levels of elective home education, and of how many families report that home education was not their preferred option? So the response from the officers: with regard to where progress is reported, this is being revised in light of proposed legislative changes which will be reported to the committee. There has been a sustained and accelerated growth in the number of children known to be electively home educated, EHE, on the Isle of Wight and nationally over many years. Currently, 847 children are identified as EHE on the Isle of Wight, although this fluctuates as children move into and out of home education. The council seeks to understand the reasons why families choose EHE. However, parents are not required to provide a reason, and therefore the available data is incomplete. Of the current cohort, 29.5% of families have not provided any reason. Among those who have, the most commonly recorded factors are mental health needs, 26.1%, physiological or lifestyle choices, 16.6%, and dissatisfaction with an aspect of school provision, 15.8%. These categories encompass a range of experiences, including well-being concerns and challenges within school, and indicate that while some families actively choose home educations, others may do so in response to difficulties. Due to the partial nature of the data set, it is not possible to quantify precisely how many families feel EHE was not their preferred option. Local authorities have a duty to identify children who may not be receiving a suitable education and to act where provision appears unsuitable. However, parents who electively home educate are not required to follow the national curriculum, enter children for formal examinations, or participate in standardised assessment. As a result, the council does not hold consistent or comparative attainment data for children who are electively home educated and is unable to draw direct comparisons with outcomes for children educated in school. At a system level, the Isle of Wight Safeguarding Children Partnership has recently completed an audit focused on children not in school and not attending regularly, which included detailed consideration of those who are electively home educated. This work has led to a shared recognition across agencies that there is a need for more coordinated strategic response. In particular, partners have agreed the importance of ensuring that elective home education is used where both it's suitable and genuinely preferred choice for families, and that is where it arises for other reasons. Children and their families are supported to feel confident in re-entering the school system at an appropriate time. Looking ahead, the proposed Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill is expected to introduce changes relating to elective home education, including strengthening expectations around local authority oversight and registration. While specific detail is still emerging, these reforms are intended to improve the ability of local authorities to understand and support this cohort more effectively.
Thank you. Number 5 on the agenda, we're going to move on to members' questions. So I have a question from Councillor Cameron. Admissions correspondence.
Want to read it out?
Do you want to read it out? Okay. Okay, thank you. Admissions correspondence provided by the council states that there were 88 preference applications from West White, made up 56 first preference applications and 32 second preference applications, representing 56 children from Freshwater, Totland and Yarmouth. Of those 56 children, 35 were allocated their first preference, 13 their second preference and 4 their third preference. This means that only 62.5% of West White children received their first preference compared with the island-wide September 2026 figure of 83.4%. Put another way, 37.5% of West White children did not receive their first preference compared with 16.6% island-wide. Can the committee explain how secondary education provision for the West White can be considered equitable, where every pupil must leave the area for secondary school, no West White specific transport or accessibility assessments appears to have been undertaken, and first preference admissions outcomes appear significantly worse than the island-wide average. This is particularly concerning because where West White pupils are not allocated the nearest practical school, public transport can involve 2 or more buses, and in some cases, one-way journey times of more than 75 minutes. So I respond to that question. The local authority acknowledges the concerns raised, but must clarify that it is only responsible for setting admissions criteria for schools for which it is the admission authority at secondary level. This applies solely to the Bay Church of England School. All other secondary schools serving West White are their own admission authorities and independently determine their admissions arrangements, including oversubscription criteria and how places are allocated. Whilst the local authority coordinates the overall admissions code, it does not control the criteria or outcomes at these schools, and therefore issues relating to accessibility, transport considerations, and first preference outcomes across the wider system are influenced by multiple autonomous providers rather than the local authority alone. The allocation of school places is undertaken through a coordinated admissions process, which applies a clear set of oversubscription criteria. A key principle underpinning this process is proximity. Where a school is oversubscribed, priority is typically given to children living closest to the school, alongside other criteria such as looked after status or sibling attendance. To access proximity fairly, a central reference point within West White has been used. Based on this measure, Carisbrooke College, 9.6 miles, and Christ the King College, 9.7 miles, are the nearest secondary schools, although other schools are accessible. Medina College, 10.9 miles, Cowes Enterprise College, 11 miles, and Island Free School, 15 miles. Carisbrooke and Christ the King are considered the closest for the purposes of this response due to the relative proximity. From September 2026, in total, 56 applications were submitted from this area. Of these, 17 families, 30.3%, applied for a school alternative to Carisbrooke College and Christ the King College. This pattern is significant, as applications for more distant schools can affect the availability of places at the nearest schools, where families choose schools outside their nearest provision. This may lead to increased competition for places beyond the local area, while also influence how places are distributed locally. Given the strong weighting on distance within the admissions criteria, children who apply to their nearest schools are more likely to secure a place at one of their preferred options. Conversely, there is a substantial proportion of families opt for schools further afield. This can reduce the likelihood of securing a first preference, both for those applying out of the area and for others within the system, due to the way places are allocated and capacity is managed. For these reasons, it is our view that the proportion out of area applications has had a direct impact on parents' ability to access their first preference school. With regards to travel times, these are assessed on an individual basis upon application for transport being made. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Cameron?
Yes, please. Will the council now undertake and publish a West White specific assessment covering admission outcomes, travel times, public transport practicality, SEND, EHCP implications, and the impact on parental choice before any future decisions are made about secondary school planning? How can the secondary education provision for the West White be considered equitable when every pupil must leave the area for secondary school? No West White specific transport accessibility assessment has been undertaken.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Yeah. And Ashley, could you answer that one for me, please?
I think we need to reply with a written response to that. One thing we do need to bear in mind when we're asking for additional information and regular reporting is the capacity that we have within the teams to provide bespoke reporting on things like that. So we'd be happy to take away, have a look and provide a written response.
Thank you, Ashley. Cameron, you're happy with that? Sorry. So this is from Councillor Carl Love.
Thank you, Chair.
You can read it out. You're going to read it,
I'm
Councillor.
going to read it, yes. Thank you very much. But first of all, I do appreciate first night, big role, and first time as chairing, difficult role, I accept that. And thank you for being inclusive as you have been in allowing other members to be able to speak. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Love. I appreciate
realise how
that.
difficult that is. So my question is, I'll go quickly. Sorry. What action is Isle of Wight Council going to take to ensure and provide a robust, inclusive voice and influence of carers and families within the Families First Partnership programme, and to ensure a fair and rigorous inclusion also in the local SEND reform plan, which states a shared plan which focuses on co-design, the local approach, a system, and with children, young people and families will help foster collective responsibilities and deliver the reforms. The SEND reforms appeal process is less fair to families and carers as proposed. Sorry, I put those two words in, as proposed. How will this be uplifted to reassure all concerned and fairness?
Thank you, Councillor Love. I'll answer that. I'll respond. In June 2026, 2 colleagues joined the council in new participation and engagement roles within the Children's Services Directorate to complement the work we already do in this area. This is a demonstration of the commitment to include the voices of children, young people, parents and carers in all our work. We know that including the views and opinions of those with lived experiences of relevant matters results in better design and delivery of serious and higher quality outcome. That is why we are very grateful to the work of the island's official Special Educational Needs and Disabilities SEND. Parent Care Forum, not just for the work they do every day, but also specific work they did to inform the content of the island's SEND reform plan. It is a better plan as a result. Thank you. We look forward to their involvement in developing future iterations of the plan and supporting its implementation. With regard to the Families First partnership, we are currently mapping existing lived experience groups and plans to utilise these alongside the work of our Children's Services participation leads to ensure that those with lived experiences help to shape our models of delivery. This activity would take place with practitioners too, at the point we have identified viable options to shape with service users and practitioners. With regard to the SEND reform appeal process, we await further information from government, which we expect after government has considered submissions to the recent period of national consultation. The council is committed to meeting its statutory duties both now and in the future. Councillor, do you have a?
Yes, thank you so much for your response. In your opening statement, you say 2 colleagues have joined the council. So in my view, that parents and carers, or is that professionals in order to make sure that parents? So that's the first bit. But island parents are deeply concerned about their rights and responsibilities, and really concerned about these SEND reforms. It's a bit awkward having that word in the 2 places, isn't it? SEND reforms. What can you say today to reassure all of those parents about these quite deep, sweeping changes which they fear? So it's about inclusion and response. So
thank you, Councillor Lau. Going to ask the Whitaker, Ashley, if you would respond to that, if you may.
I'd be happy to. I wonder if we might cover it when we deal with the item on the SEND reforms, because there is actually a bespoke item on the agenda about the SEND reforms. In answer to the first bit of the question, they are 2 new colleagues into the council, but what they will be doing is working with the existing groups that we have across the island that represent parents and carers and children and young people, and directly with parents and carers and directly with children and young people. And that complements the work that we already do in this area. But that is, as the answer said, a demonstration of the importance that is assigned to collecting the views and opinions of those with lived experience.
So they are employees then, not parents and carers, which would be ideal to.
Thank you for all the questions. Now we're going on to number 6 on the agenda, the performance update, to receive and consider the progress update from the Strategic Director for Children's Services in accordance with the committee's responsibility for the overview of service performance and improvement. So I think that's for you, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by thanking all members of the committee for their public service and standing in the elections, but also for putting themselves forward to be members of this committee, which obviously we all work in this sector and we believe it to be an absolutely vital part of the work of the council. So thank you for your service. This report at the moment is a quarterly report, so it comes to the committee every quarter. You'll see that there's a covering report and then a lot of data. So I'm just going to pull out a few things as highlight, and then we'll open it up to questions. So the first thing I want to highlight is that the needs of children are increasing. So a couple of examples would be, if we think about the types of risk that safeguarding risks that are out there in children's lives, they are going up. Let's think about online harm. We've got Ruth here who can answer any questions more about this when we open it up. But more and more children are at risk of exploitation through online activity, and we need to be proactive about responding to that and doing everything we can to keep those children safe with police and the NHS and other partners. Another example of where needs are going up is in March, we saw the highest ever number of requests for education and healthcare needs assessments, 47 in 1 month. We'd never had such a number, and that is a representation of the needs that we're seeing amongst children. Three things which are, I would say, positive. So none of these represent any complacency at all. We have more work to do, but I would point to the significant improvement that's happened since last autumn and the end of March, but actually also through to today in our performance around the issuing of education and healthcare plans within 20 weeks. Back in the autumn, it was less than 10%. It's now over 80%. That's a very significant improvement. The national data came out last week, and nationally it's about 48%. So we should be really proud of that. There's more work to do in terms of the quality of those plans and also our timeliness around annual reviews. We have a lot of work to do, but we are going in the right direction. I've attached two items which are examples of external comment on what's happening. The first one is a letter from the Youth Justice Board of England and Wales, and they wrote to us on the 6th of March, and they told us that they were going to upgrade the Isle of Wight Youth Justice Service from Quadrant 2 to Quadrant 1. So they grade all youth justice services around the country in 4 categories. 4's the lowest, 1's the top. Ruth leads that service. She's here to answer any questions on it. Back in autumn 2023, we were in Quadrant 3. We were moved up into Quadrant 2 later in 2024, and they've now moved us up to the top category. Again, more work to do, but we should be really proud of the progress that we are making with regard to that. And the third thing I wanted to highlight is that you've got a copy of the Ofsted focused visit around care leavers, care experienced young people. I hope you enjoyed reading many of the very positive comments in there, but I would draw your attention to the comment about the need to improve the quality of accommodation where some of our care experienced young people are living. Too many, for example, in bed and breakfast, it's not appropriate. And it's a good example of where this is not all in the gift of children's services to sort out. We need to work with colleagues across the council, in housing, and also external partners to address this. This has been an issue which has been around on the island for many years, and we still have not solved it, but we need to solve it as quickly as possible. Ofsted will be coming back to have a look at it again in the autumn, and we need to have addressed as much of it as we can before that. 3 areas of focus where we need to deliver rapid improvement. Homes for children, so building on that theme, it's not just about homes for care experienced young people, so adults, 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds. It's also about younger children. We need to have more foster carers, and we need to have more access to residential provision when that's required. Elective home education has already come up. It's a real priority. The numbers continue to increase, and there are lots of matters around that, not just the reflection on what parents feel about the school system, but also about the additional safeguarding risks that relate to that when children are not being seen by professionals on a regular basis. And the third thing I would draw your attention to is the financial challenges. So we know that the council is in a challenging situation. We know that we must keep our focus on early identification and early support. If we do that, we will reduce the escalation of need and we will reduce the numbers of children in statutory services, as we are doing. So 3 years ago, we had 288 children in care, or 2.5 years ago, we had 288 children in care. We've now got 262. Child protection plans, we've been up to as high as 230. We're now at about 165. So this is good for children, but it's also good for the council's budget. So we've got to really keep the focus on that in challenging times. And we need to make sure that partners as well, particularly the Integrated Care Board, the NHS, and particularly the police, are meeting their statutory duties in terms of assigning adequate resource to deliver their responsibilities in this regard. I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Are there any questions? Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. I was particularly heartened to read in the report about the drop in suspensions largely across the board, because of course for children to receive an education, first of all they have to be in education. So just to pick out a couple of numbers, primary's gone from 3.27 down to 1.24, secondary from 26.9 down to 10.4, and special schools from 6.01 down to 0.48, and also the numbers reflected even more exaggeratedly in the children that are in receipt of an educational healthcare plan. So I just want to ask, is that because we're not excluding kids anymore as a rule, or is there an initiative that's driven that change? Thank you.
Thank you. So I think what we've got is a real partnership happening across school leadership, local authority. It's not about a process. It's not about punishment. It's about actually working for the needs of our children and young people. And there's a real ambition across our education system to support our young people to stay in education, and that suspensions are used as a last resort, but actually it's about looking at why, what happened, what are the needs, and how do we meet those better earlier on. So I think it's an aligned ambition that is coming through, that is supporting the data that you see, but we are still determined to work hard across that partnership.
Thank you, Beth. Just, is there any other questions? Councillor Cowan?
We have repeatedly heard that elective home education numbers are high. Given that the committee is now considering school place planning, surplus capacity and the possibility of school closures, I think it's vital that elective home education is looked at closely. Before decisions are made about reducing school places, we need to understand why parents are removing children from school. Otherwise, we risk making decisions based on wrong numbers without understanding whether some children could and should be supported back into school.
Councillor Cameron.
Depending on what the committee asks us to do relating to the school place planning item, we would be pleased to include additional data about the reasons that children are being electively home educated and why parents and carers are making that choice. I think there was some data shared actually in the response to the question. So we do track it when parents are willing to give us the answer about why they're choosing to do it. I would say that whilst on the one hand, it would address part of the surplus plan situation by some of those children coming back, we should remember that within that group, there are parents who are exerting their right to electively home educate for perfectly valid reasons. But it's also true that often families write to me to say that it's not their first choice. They're doing it because they have not had good experiences in a mainstream school, and for that reason they're doing it. So one of the things about the island and education, it's all connected. So what we are aiming to do through driving up the quality of education in all schools is to address lots of these issues. So these families who are electively home educating for reasons that are not philosophical reasons, they will be drawn back into the school system when they have confidence that their children's needs can be met. It will also address a range of other things in terms of escalation need around special educational needs and other associated issues. But the core thing is improving the quality of education in all schools for all children.
Thank you, Chair. It's not going to squeak on me. No, good. So this is an extremely important report because understanding the state of the system is what will guides our understanding of what we should be doing and how we should be going about addressing that. So I have two or three questions questions on it. And I'll place them in a context after I sort of set the question, which will give perhaps the director a chance to sort of formulate an answer to my question, but there's some context as well, or his team. The first thing I would generally observe is that the data shows areas of considerable strength, of good improvements, but still of significant concerns. I think that's how I would sum up this report. And we've heard some of that. I'd like an understanding of what the team feels about the quality of the data. Is it completely trustworthy, or is there still work to be done on the quality and ensuring it actually accurately represents the state of play at this quarter report? Second, I would just observe the presentation of the data. It is, I can't see the wood for the trees kind of thing. And I wonder if we need to now be working towards a way of presenting data that's more immediately accessible to those of us who aren't looking at it on a day-to-day basis. And people who've seen me on this council before have heard me talk about how presentation of data enhances understanding what that data is telling you. A further question, although there's a reference to reporting on the financial situation in the Q1 report for this year, I wonder if the team could give an insight already as to where the direction of travel is for the budget. And the director himself referred to that already, about budget planning should be underway already. The context I'd place this in is we're at the start of a 3-year term, a new municipal cycle. This committee will be responsible for developing improvements across its portfolio of improvements. The question from the representative from Send Reform, you asked, did the committee, I think you asked if the committee agreed with the comments. What Mr. Whitaker set out earlier, I would say through you, Chair, did not disagree with anything he said there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't much more to be done. I would also observe, and I'm in sympathy here with my colleague here on the left, Councillor Blake, about the question that allowed a response which was from the Reform group. Do I align myself with that answer as a member of a different party? I do not align myself with that answer, and I would like to make that clear. We have political differences, and the purpose of this committee will be about in finding those commonalities of purpose. There are elements of that response with which I could agree. The improvement in children's education is paramount. That places the context, but I think it's going to be really important that we all here on this committee recognise that there are differences of approach, but the way that we attack those differences of approach is through high quality data that is absolutely trustworthy, that we can feel we can have great confidence in, that we both trust the figures and understand the figures, which hopefully is given long enough for Mr. Whitaker and his team to come back to my questions around data quality and the direction of travel of the budget at this moment in time. Thank you, Chair.
Garrett.
Data quality, I think we can be more confident about the data quality than we were 12 months ago. What I would say is that there's a huge amount of manual input on the data. Kay might want to add something to this. And we have a lot of work to do on it. We know that having a really good grip of the data is not only vital to understand how the needs of children are being understood and responded to, but it's also vital to have confidence in the data for planning the future. So I think that our grip of the data is good enough for that, but I would be delighted if we could move to a more automated system where we didn't have to spend so much officer time in it on making sure that there are manual entries and reports that are manually created, because you have some senior people doing that sort of work because of the lack of other people to do it. So that's what I'd say about the quality of data. The presentation of the data is a related point, actually. You know, if we had more automation, we would be able to run data reports much more easily, and it would generate more helpful presentation styles. In terms of the budget, what I can tell you is that the forecast at the end of month 2 of this financial year, so at the end of May, that the forecast spend for the general fund is a year-on-year increase of 4.2%, which if you consider where inflation is running, and you consider the needs of children are going up, and you consider the inflation within the children's home sector is often as high as 6 to 8%, 4.2% year on year is an understandable increase in spend. Against budget, that is a significant overspend relative to budget, because the budget was not such a percentage increase in year-on-year spend. So I'm not sure whether the actual numbers have been released yet. I don't know if it's appropriate to say the exact numbers, because I'm not sure if they've actually come through the right process yet through the performance committees. But if I leave it at that, you'll get a sense of where we are. And that relates to what I said earlier about the difficult financial situation that the council's in.
Thank you, Ashley. Any other questions?
If I may come back on that. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Director for a very candid answer to my question. And I think it gets to the heart of those of us who were on the council, Councillor Blake, for example, when we negotiated the budget earlier this year. This council is in an incredibly challenged situation financially, and it is one of the reasons why it felt it necessary to put forward a huge sum of money towards transformation. And it sounds to me that things like automating data input is an area which the council could look at to apply transformation funds, which means that staff's valuable time can be placed on things that staff will most do well, and that automation can then deal with that sort of side of things. I'm really keen to see this organisation move to a point where staff go home on time and with no worries in their mind that as to the work that they have for the following day. Thoughts about it, but not worries. And at the moment, I feel that that all of local government faces a real struggle, that people are having to work those extra hours and go home with worries, which has impact on their well-being, because ultimately we're not properly funded from the central side of things. I've made my political point. But here on the Isle of Wight, through the Transformation Board, once it's set up and properly functioning, I think tackling the budget side of things and the efficiency side of things is going to be very important. So I'm grateful to the Director for his response there.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, then that's noted. The service performance and improvement is noted. And we'll carry on now to decisions and updates. I'm going to ask the committee if they would mind if we move one of the areas, the SEND reform, up to number 1 on the agenda, because we have Anna here at the moment. Jenny, beg your pardon for me. And it would be great if she could do a report, and then we can allow you to go if you want.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to say some remarks about the SEND reforms, and then we'll open it up to discussion. The SEND reforms have been a long time coming, and not everyone is happy with all the detail of it, but it's the biggest piece of change in SEND policy legislation approach since 2014. And people have been asking for changes since about 2017, when local areas were being inspected, and the financial and the outcomes weren't great, and the financial situation started to deteriorate within local authorities' high needs blocks of their dedicated schools grant. At the core of it is the importance of early identification and early support, and supporting mainstream schools to be able to support a wider range of additional need within a mainstream environment, with or without an education healthcare plan. There is money associated with the reforms, broken down into two main pots as far as the local authority is concerned. Money to support the development of what's called experts at hand. So this is expertise around educational psychology, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and also specialist inclusion support, and money around improving our physical assets. So we have about £680,000 for the former. The rest of this financial year, we don't know how much we'll get next financial year and the financial year afterwards. And for physical asset improvement, we have about 8.9 million over 3 years. So the plan has been submitted. Thank you very much to the Parent Carer Forum, who spent a huge amount of time and effort inputting into the plan directly, but also coordinating via workshops, online and face-to-face, with parents and carers to make sure that their voices are included. I hope that they feel that the plan does reflect their input. I believe that the plan is a better plan because of their input and support. We will find out, we think, in December from the Department for Education whether the report is judged to be okay or not okay. If it is okay, the council would receive its high needs stability grant, which will be 90% of the overspend in our dedicated schools grant as at the end of last financial year, which is about 15 million quid. So it's a lot of money. If it's deemed not to be okay, we'll have to improve it and resubmit it in the middle of November. And then we will presumably receive the money at some point after that. We're optimistic that it will be judged to be an okay plan. I would highlight some of the concerns that have been raised about the reforms, because on the one hand, whilst it is embedded in, I believe, good principles for children around early identification and early support, some of the things that have been raised as concerns are around the capacity of schools to actually deliver what is going to be asked of them, given that schools are already very busy. And the second thing is, I think, related to Councillor Love's earlier question, which is around the long-term future of education and healthcare plans and that statutory end of the system for those children who have the highest needs. I would draw your attention in the reform plan, which is about 144 pages, to the risk register, pages 126 to 128, where we were able to share up to 5 risks, and we've put them in there. And you'll note that there is a reference in there to the resources available to deliver this plan. The Department for Education has allocated some money to the council to help deliver this. I've said in the risk register, but also in another section in the plan about asks of the DfE, that we would like to have meetings to ask for some more, because I do not believe that the methodology used results in an adequate amount of money for the council to deliver this transformation work. One final point is that this is not just about the council. The SEND reforms are, it's the responsibility of the council and the NHS to lead these reforms. Sometimes with regard to SEND, people think it's the council. It's not just the council, it's the council and the NHS that share responsibility for this. And the ICB, the NHS must make sure that they are allocating sufficient resources to this as well. And it's also the duties of all the other organisations listed in the SEND Code of Practice to meet their duties around this as well, which include essentially everyone who's involved in it, from early years providers, schools, colleges, NHS trusts providers, etc. So it's a whole system plan. It's not just a council plan, but although we do have a leadership role within that. That's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any further questions? Councillor Cameron.
The SEND reform risk register is blunt, that relationships and trust with parents and carers may not improve enough, and that this is a crisis level risk. What practical change will families actually notice by Christmas, not just a new board, dashboard or governance structure?
Thank you. Councillor Cameron. Ashley.
So by Christmas, I hope that the families will see in the plan that their voices have been heard and their voices have actually impacted. But maybe Jenny might want to comment on this in the plan. So some of the language I'm using tonight is a direct result of what parents have said to us. You might have noticed I'm not using a particular word that people used to use. I'm not going to say it, but I talk about early support because that's what families ask for. And that sort of change is really important. So if we're trying to build an inclusive culture in our schools, the language that is used with children, but also with families, is really, really important. I think the other thing that they'll notice is actually, I guess you could call it boots on the ground. So we have used some of this money very, very quickly to recruit. So we have 3 new assistant educational psychologists who are starting on the 1st of September. So as soon as they've got their laptops revved up, they'll be out and about working, understanding the needs of children, listening to families, and supporting our wider workforce to better meet the needs of children. And we will also be through the multi-agency panel about how we decide how we're going to spend the rest of that £680,000. We'll be commissioning specialist provision, either from our specialist provision we already have on the island to go into mainstream, or we'll be commissioning third parties to come in and do it. The challenge around that is all the other local authorities are trying to do that as well. So we need to focus on the brilliant talent we have on the island and really make the most of the skills and expertise we already have here, but make sure that a wider range of children are benefiting from that. I don't know if Jenny wants to say anything about that, or how it's been like for families, this process, or how families are really feeling about it, whether I've been fair in my representation or not.
Thank you for letting me respond to that. I would say there's a way to go. I think there's going to be, we're talking about a legacy of mistrust and disappointment from families with regards to SEN provision and responses on the island. So that's going to take time. However, I think it is acknowledged that whilst language is a good start, and it's a start, and we need to keep going with that. And there is so much more to be able to reach all of the different disability communities on the island. This is something that hasn't really been achieved previously and needs to. We believe the Parent Carer Forum. This is something. So the communities that perhaps aren't as represented in different spheres, a real need to fully understand parent carers where specialist provision has been lacking, missing, and what that has meant for quality of life. And I think quality of life is something that should be first and foremost around all of these plans. Yes, absolutely, it's about education and it's about health and care. There's the 3 things that are in these plans or not, but ultimately the outcome is quality of life, and that should be the driver for this. So yeah, I think we welcome as much involvement as possible, and us, Parent Carer Forum, as the conduit for a wide range of parent carer voices that will influence the development of these reform plans on the island going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there no further questions?
I think Councillor Love.
Sorry, Councillor Love.
Sorry, I'm not on the committee. I believe it's Councillor Blake first. Okay, thank you. Sorry, we won't fall over ourselves. Yes, I thank you so much for your comments, particularly. So I'm not quite clear. Is there somebody here from Health tonight? We've got a health representative from the Integrated Care Board. That concerns me immediately, because we've said how this is a partnership approach, and having worked in both education and health, we need to work together if we're going to crack this nut. And it is a huge nut. And you're quite right, there has been a legacy of confrontation and conflicts from families themselves having to fight hard to get even the most basic of services for their assessments. You know, things like taking 2 years to get reviews of children's care plans and things. So whilst it's welcome, I think we need to do as much as we can. The reason I keep going on about parents and carers is because that's who we represent. We are here to represent the parents and carers and the families and the communities. And they are telling me that they are very, very concerned about this plan, which is why I asked the question earlier. What is it that we're going to say and do to encourage parents to engage with them, to be transparent and to bring them their fears and have those fears addressed? And then from that basis, we can build moving forward. That's why I asked the question, because we need that to be better. I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Can you actually repeat the question for me so I can understand your question?
Oh, that's a good question. So where is health tonight? And that's the first question. What, you know, if we're going to be part of this togetherness, why are they not here in this room with everybody else? That's the question. And the second question is, again, I come back to, what are you going to say that really, really, really assures parents that their concerns are going to be heard? Sorry.
Cool. Thank you very much, Councillor Love. From my opinion, if I can add an opinion, is that okay? We can't invite everybody to the committee meeting. I think we've got a good representation this evening tonight, but we take on board your question. I think it's quite a relevant question. Perhaps next time, Ashley, that we could have someone from health along.
Yeah, so last Thursday night, we had a scrutiny item at the Health Scrutiny Committee as part of the Adults, Social Care, Housing and Public Health meeting. So we had the Deputy Director of Children's Commissioning from the Integrated Care Board and the Head of SEND, Special Education Needs and Disabilities for the area for the Isle of Wight as well. So they were both here. They were sitting just there next to me, and we were talking specifically about the health elements of special educational needs and disabilities on the island. So they are engaged. They are often here. And if the committee want them to come to this, they're within your gift. In terms of what are we going to say to parents? Well, I think we need to demonstrate to them that there are going to be actions. It's not just about what people say and what people write in plans. It's about delivering on the ground, isn't it? But we want to be as transparent as we possibly can. So everything's published, obviously, and we'll continue to publish what we're doing. We've recruited these 2 additional people who will support with that to make sure that we've got additional avenues into parents and carers and children and young people to make sure that their voices are being collected, and we'll make sure that we're feeding back in terms of what has been the impact of that work. So we are determined to be doing that in the coming months, and we hope that by delivering on this, that we will rebuild the trust, which is too often lacking. We accept that. And I think that actually, if I look at the history of what's been going on for years, I can understand why significant numbers of parents and carers are not happy. And it's not just about the council, it's also about what's been happening in mainstream schools, for example. This is all connected, but we're determined to drive improvements on this in the months and years to come.
Thank you, Ashley. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Love. And we're going to move on. I think Councillor Blake, that's the question.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, just a little comment on the answer that Ashley's just given. I mean, I think that this is a little bit of a problem created by the committee system rather than the cabinet system that hasn't truly been corrected, in that we had previously under the cabinet system someone making decisions, i.e. this committee within one person, but then we had the Children's Scrutiny Committee, so we could give a lot more time to asking those questions that we haven't got now. So that I think that's just a comment on that, really. One thing I'd like to pick up on is really a reinforcement of what was said earlier about the educational healthcare plan. The healthcare is in the name there. Where the ICB, the changes that are being made in there, whether we are going to have proper scrutiny on whether we are getting our share of that out of the ICB, given that we're going to lose a lot of the scrutiny element because we won't have our places on certain committees linking into the ICB anymore, and Health Watch is going. But I also want to say that trust is built on actions. I think that's a point. So a sort of supplementary type question built into that: when can families reasonably expect a difference in the speed? Really, I think is the main thing of getting children to the point where their education is back on track, because I think all agree that once an EHCP is identified as being needed to be applied, effectively a child's education is put on hold until that's resolved. And in some cases, children aren't able to even attend some form of education in the meantime until something is resolved. So those two questions, please.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. I think there's 3 parts to what you said there. One was just a comment, if I'm right. And the second was regarding the education and health plan, which perhaps Ashley can come on to, and a supplementary question. Is that correct? Okay. We're just going to do the main question. So Ashley, would you mind helping with that one, please, answering that?
So I welcome the focus on partners, because this is a really good example of where the council cannot do this on its own. And that's so often the case. We have to work with the NHS, we have to work with the police. I think last week demonstrated that the NHS will come to things, so we can scrutinise them and we can ask for information. On the upside, I would say that a lot of integrated care boards around the country, when they've restructured, they've actually lost a bespoke children's commissioning function totally, and it's gone into an all-age commissioning function. We should be pleased with the fact that actually in the Hampshire and the Isle of Wight ICE Integrated Care Board, they've retained a bespoke children's function, which I welcome. I'm optimistic, but this is a challenge not just around special educational needs, it's also about safeguarding. So with regard to children's safeguarding, there are 3 lead statutory partners. It's the local authority, it's the police, and it's the NHS. So we need to make sure that in any NHS changes, it's not just the impacting on special educational needs, but it's also on the capacity that they're putting into the system to deliver on their safeguarding challenges, their safeguarding responsibilities as well. With regard to how long is it going to take for children and families to see an impact, I can think of some children who are already seeing a much faster response time in terms of how their education and healthcare plans being prepared and issued. That's good, because there are already some children, I believe, that are benefiting from the changes that have been put in place over the 9 months. We're absolutely not there yet. Even when you've got an education and healthcare plan, you've got to make sure that there's quality provision of what's specified in the plan as well. And we have gaps in the system there as well. So if a child has a certain need, it says that need needs to be met within a certain way in the plan. If we don't have a way of doing that because the service isn't commissioned, then that's, doesn't work for the child either. So there's a lot to do. But I would say on the upside, I think there are some children that are already in a better place than they were, but for others, it will take longer.
Thank you, Ashley. Question from Councillor Garrett.
It's more of an observation. First of all, Councillor Blake is right. There is a gap between the cabinet system, where there was dedicated scrutiny, and this committee system. As an enthusiast for the committee system, I first see it as self-scrutinising, so that's really good. That's the questions that we ask. But I would say to him and that we might want to look at how we adapt the constitution, going through a constitutional review to bring in a greater depth of scrutiny into our function. There's nothing about being a committee system that stops us from having a formal scrutiny function as well. And then I've just really welcomed, I wrote down this comment that there was a legacy of mistrust and disappointment. Now, I'm a numbers person. I like to put numbers on everything, but that doesn't mean I discount qualitative data. A statement like that is more powerful to me than any number of percentages. So I'd love it when you come to us and tell us that it's now a situation of trust and of satisfaction. And if there is a day that that will come, I really, really look forward to it. And you and your organisation have, and I absolutely have confidence in the director when he says he wants to involve people, have a very, very key part to play in bringing us to that situation of trust and satisfaction. And that's what certainly as a councillor, and I'm sure all of us who are members of this committee, I think we will want to put ourselves into that mix as well. So do get in contact with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Any other questions? Okay, the committee have noted the response. The committee have noted the response, and we will now move on to Families First Partnership Delivery Plan update. Is that from you, Ashley? It's from. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So this report provides an update on the Isle of Wight's implementation of the National Families First Partnership Programme, which is part of the Department for Education's Social Care Reset agenda. The programme's focus is early intervention and prevention, enabling children to remain safely within their families and improving multi-agency working. A key note is that the expectation that local authorities will undertake and complete their transformation by March 2027. The three programme pillars are family help, which brings together targeted early help and child and need services into a seamless offer. It also provides multidisciplinary team working, supporting families around their locality base, multi-agency child protection teams, and family group decision making. In terms of those three pillars, they are also supported by a programme-wide system workforce development plan and a case management system changes. The funding that's in place is in place over 3 years. You'll note that for 2 years we have some additional money, but it is important to also note that the money is ring-fenced and it is made up of previous grants with some additional funding included. In terms of progress on the Isle of Wight since the last report, which was in January time, there has been a multi-agency programme board established. Terms of reference have been developed across all work streams and the project manager has been recruited and project planning is underway. All work streams have commenced and there is a current focus on workforce mapping and surveys and the mapping of locality needs. There is work to recruit a family group decision-making lead and work is also underway regarding the data and case management system work design. In terms of the practice model that's required to deliver these changes, it's agreed in principle that the family safeguarding model would be the overarching principle. There are some challenges within that in terms of the financial envelope to deliver that. However, we are underpinned by trauma-informed practice, motivational interviewing and the family group decision making, and that work is progressing. In terms of key challenges and risks, the report outlines that there are challenges and risks within this programme, the capacity across all partner agencies to deliver in terms of the timescale of implementation and the workforce challenges, given we've already touched upon the Isle of Wight community and some of the challenges we have in terms of recruiting skilled workforce. It is also running alongside a major ICT and data programme upgrades taking place alongside this programme, and that again is a challenge given our size. Ensuring that the transformation that we deliver is financially sustainable long term and delivers the outcomes is also something of note, and aligning this programme with all the other reforms that we've started to touch on today is also key. In terms of mitigating those risks, there are strong governance arrangements in place. There's a programme board that is multi-agency and that reports to the Safeguarding Children's Partnership to manage those risks. Our next steps over the coming months are to finalise the family help and multi-agency child protection team mapping and look at what delivery models are potentially able to deliver what we need. The workforce development plan and rolling out training, embedding family group decision making, completing our system and data redesign and engaging with people with lived experience, children and practitioners as part of that scoping of delivery options and service design. It's proposed that a further update would come to this committee in December 2026 once key service delivery decisions have been made and there's been further progress regarding implementation. And then I'll take any questions if there are.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions on committee? Okay, so we note the report, and also an update will be brought in December 26. So if we carry on, is everybody okay at the moment? Does anyone need a break? You're happy at the moment? Okay, thank you. So we go on to the next item, which is item B, decisions and updates. This is a regional care cooperative plan.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
The reason for the report is to seek your approval for delegated authority to the Strategic Director of Children's Services, so Ashley Whitaker, and our Section 115 officer, and that's to approve the Isle of Wight Council joining the South East Regional Care Cooperative and the associated funding arrangements also within that. I'll explain to you just very briefly, because I'm assuming you've read the report, just what the Regional Care Cooperative is. So this is a government arrangement, and this Regional Care Cooperative is called Home and Future Limited. It's a not-for-profit organisation, and it's a partnership of South East councils. And the primary purpose is to improve the children's placements and that they are planned and commissioned across that region. So you'll be aware that, like many authorities, we have real sufficiency challenges on the Isle of Wight in regards to having access to the right homes for the children that we care for at the right time. It's a local issue, regional and national issue, hence some of the government reforms that are taking place in this regard. So currently we've got around 260 children that we care for. And as Ashley alluded to earlier when he took you through our performance report and some of the pressures that we're experiencing in children's social care, the experiences of those children's lives is growing in complexity, and that relates to the challenges also about finding the right homes for those children at the right time. Additional pressure that we have to consider on the island, of course, is that stretch of water. So what we know is best for children is to be placed nearer to their homes, their communities, their schools, their friendship groups and so forth. However, with the sufficiency challenges that we have, what that often means is that children have to be placed off island on the mainland. And currently, we've got about 27% of children who live off island. So that, of course, has a wider impact. Ashley also referenced about some of our challenges, and certainly it was a discussion, a question that we had in regards to our financial forecasting. And currently, if we continue on the same trajectory that we have at the moment for the children that we care for in some of those high cost arrangements, we're forecast a 3 million overspend in that regard. So the Regional Care Cooperative, so the purpose of that is to enable councils to work together so that we're not competing against each other for the same homes or what we call placements for children. So it's hoped and intended that it'll improve regional planning and sufficiency, particularly for children's residential care. There is discussion and potential scope for children's foster care arrangements to be brought into the Regional Care Cooperative as well, but that's in early stages of development, and we are awaiting further direction from government in that regard. But also what it can do by working together across a region is strengthen collective influence around providers and market costs, because the costs of homes for children are significantly high. And of course for ourselves, if there is an expansion in regards to provision, and that's more locally within the region, then that could help us for children to live closer to home. So what we would hope, if the Isle of Wight buy into this arrangement, is that we'd have nearer local provision. That doesn't necessarily mean that that will be homes on the island, but it may be that we have more homes available to us on the south coast. We hope that that would reduce some of that reliance upon homes that are at a much greater distance from us, but also at that higher cost if we can impact the market through the regional arrangement. And of course, what's really important is you've just heard from Anna, who talked to you about the Family First programme, which is about the government reforms in social care. There are a suite of recommendations and
processes that we will need to go through within those reforms, which also aligns with arrangements for children that we care for, whether that be through kinship arrangements, but also children's residential. So the financial implications you'll see from the paper is that for us to enter into that arrangement would cost £200,000, and that's over a 2-year period. That would be funded from the transformation reserves. However, if we are to invest in this arrangement, it would be an investor save opportunity if we're able to increase the options and opportunities that we have for our children to live in homes that are more reasonable, in line with market value and quality, but also closer to the island if they are in the southeast. So what members should note is that the recommendation is for delegated authority rather than an immediate final decision today. The reason for that is that will allow Ashley as the strategic director and the section 115 officer to conclude the necessary legal, financial and governance arrangements before financial approval is given. The approach also is to ensure that the council take into account any other developments affecting the regional care cooperative before formally committing to the membership arrangements. So in summary, this is a strategic partnership which aims to improve the outcomes for some of our most vulnerable children, and that's about increasing local provision or provision that's nearer to the island with a reduced future financial cost, reducing pressures for us as a council, but also across the region. And therefore we seek your approval for delegated authority and decision making.
Thank you, Kay. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm very much in support. I just had a query regarding if there's any review mechanisms or sort of breakpoints contractually, should the arrangements not be fulfilling our criteria of what we're aiming to get out of it. At what point can we review and then step into a different decision around the cooperative?
Happy to answer. So obviously, if we commit to the arrangement, there will be contractual arrangements in place. The complicating factor is there's multiple local authorities that will be part of those arrangements, but our commissioning service and also our legal department will oversee those arrangements in regards to that commitment. My understanding is initially it will be a year-on-year commitment. However, what we haven't yet done is negotiate as a region those finer details, unless Ashley tells me any different.
They're asking for a 2-year commitment, so it would be 100,000 for this financial year, 100,000 for next financial year, but it would be a 2-year commitment basically. But Kay's absolutely right. You know, we haven't got to the fine detail of it yet, and there's also, as it says in the paper, there's a matter outstanding which is about subsidies. There's been a legal challenge brought against the regional care cooperative around local authorities subsidising an organisation which is then in competition with the free market, and that's currently being challenged. So there's a number of things to get through before we would agree anything.
Thank you, Ashley. Councillor Blake, I think you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are a couple of procedural ones. First of all, this is asking us to delegate authority to the Strategic Director of Children's Services and the Section 151 officer. Given that we currently have a temporary one, I know you as a councillor, I don't know the temporary one, and I don't know if it's going to be the temporary one in place when it comes to that decision. So whether it's what exactly I'm asking, I don't know, but I say I'm unsure about giving someone responsibility that I don't know the outcome to. And would that, I suppose, would that decision be a 50-50 one for you, or would it be, are you giving a strong recommendation to our Section 151 officer that this is a good thing? But second of all, moving on to the money, given that we are taking this from the transformational reserves proposal, is this committee in a position to make that decision finally, or is this going to have to go to PFR for approval?
So I have met the well, the permanent Section 151 officer is still in post, and if we're in a situation where we haven't appointed a new one, permanent one, this person will be around. He's got a really good understanding of children's services. He's got a very long track record of working in a similar role elsewhere, so he's got a really good grasp of children's services. If it would make you more comfortable, I'd be happy for the chief executive to be added to it, for example, who obviously would be consistent throughout. But personally, you know, he's got a really good understanding of children's services. In terms of the second point, which has just gone out of my head.
So whether this committee has the
oh yes, sorry, yeah. So we actually had the approval for this was actually given about 18 months ago in terms of the historic transformation fund which the council has. And that went through the internal approval mechanism at the time. So it's there, having been approved under the old approval system from about 18 months ago. So that is, it's not like a new decision in terms of that funding being allocated from the new arrangements under the transformation board and the like. So that's how it is currently sitting.
So just to confirm that this committee decision today is the last time that this has to have someone approve it, and it will be actioned.
So it would come back to myself for the Section 151, and we would make sure that anything else that had to be decided internally, either through the previous approval under the Transformation Fund, or if the new Transformation Board decides that historic decisions are no longer valid and it needs to be done again, we would make sure that it went through that process as well.
Thank you, Chair. I noted that if I've read the report right, that 14 local authorities are already signed up on this, so we're one of 3 just still to sort of give a commitment on that. That is, hopefully I've read that right. What's the basis for our £100,000 for 2 years? Is that the ticket price for every authority, or is it a per capita cost to us? And the officer in her presentation talked about proximity to the island for placements. What do you think puts off those from thinking that actually the placement opportunities should be on the island, which would boost our economy in some way? The island is a very good place to find oneself at some point or another in one's life. What is the possibility of us being able to persuade an organisation like this to actually stop seeing the Solent as a barrier to delivering a service here on the island, which would benefit ourselves as an island, but I think would benefit others who may find themselves placed here as well. So what's the ticket price, and what's the barrier to seeing some placement opportunities, or at least arguing for those through this cooperative?
I do the first one and Kay does the second one. So the first one is the Regional Care Cooperative developed a formula to calculate how different size authorities should contribute to this. It was based on the number of children in care, and that was agreed about 2.5 years ago. We had 288 children in care at the time. I have suggested that now that we've got less than that, we should have a reduction, but it's been delivered across the whole network. And I'm not optimistic I'll be able to negotiate it down. So just so we're clear about who else is in and who's out. So there are 2 authorities. So some have already signed up, 14. Some are in the process of doing what we're doing, and 2 are out. One is Kent and the other is West Sussex, and that's for various reasons. So, you know, not everyone has said yes to this. My uncertainty around that is how that is that is at odds with the direction of government policy. Government's very, very clear that they expect local authorities to join on this, but clearly there are 2 other local authorities who've decided that despite that they're not going to join. So for awareness. And Kate can answer the second question.
Thank you. In regards to the regional care cooperative, what's happening is that they are doing what's called a sufficiency analysis, and that's across the region. So at the moment, each local authority have submitted their data in regards to the number of children that they care for. This has been trend data over a 3-year period, and also the kind of homes that children are living in, the number, the distance, and so on and so forth. So that analysis across the region will then be able to inform any future arrangements in regards to development of children's residential homes. However, it will not just be about building and creating capital to build homes in different areas, albeit that may be one of the strategies that they undertake. It will also be about how they can influence the current market. So that will be about regional and national arrangements with current providers around the standard and quality of care that they provide. So to influence both the quality of care, but also the cost of that. So it might be through those partnership arrangements that particular providers, what we call preferred providers, then work with the regional care cooperative, to expand some of their provision. However, the business plan is yet to be outlined in that regard. So there's the analysis that's taking place about sufficiency needs. Will they build a home on the island within that? I wouldn't know whether that would be something that they would consider. If they were to do that, one of the challenges that we have on the island, of course, because you are right when you reference about other children, so there are other children that are cared for by other local authorities that live on the island, whether that be in foster care arrangements or potentially in children's residential homes, because we do have some. But what that creates for us as well is a greater challenge in regards to sufficiency for island children. So it may be that what we would have to look at within that is across the region, how does each local authority meet the needs for their local children, if that makes sense. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to ask again. And my concern is about the PFR, if I'm honest about it. So 18 months ago, that might well have been agreed, but of course, we're in a completely different financial position from where we were then. My understanding is that even some of the basic new projects, because this is a new project within a project, have all got to go to PFR because of spend. That's my understanding. So I would just want a little bit of suggest that you take a little bit of time and clarity around this, because what you don't want to do is break the rules in terms of what was actually agreed in terms of how the funds are spent. And from my point of view, I haven't heard anything yet that convinces me that this is going to be a one-off payment. We're talking about a project, a good project by the sounds of it. I'm not criticising that in any way. However, there does seem to be an ongoing basis. And as you've just said now, there is no business case, but you're actually basing a decision on a business case that's not developed, which could cost this council significant amounts of money. And therefore, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, it should really go to PFR for their approval, because that's what their job is. But perhaps I'm wrong with that. I'm not trying to stop it, by the way. I think it's a good project, but I just think that somebody needs to take some legal advice there about whether if this is a decision that you can actually make, or if it's got to go to PFR.
Thank you, Councillor. I was under the impression that any financial areas like you're speaking about will go forward to PFR, but I don't know. Ashley, can you help me on that one, please?
My view on it is that because one of the reasons to have the Section 151 officer alongside myself in terms of the decision is to make sure that any decisions that the Section 151 officer makes are in line with the rules. So I'd be confident that he will be fully abreast of what the rules are, and it will go through any other internal mechanisms that need to take place.
So, Chair, can I come back? Because my point is that a 151 officer should not be making a decision about our children's future. We make a decision, and then they fit into the, we're giving the authority to the officers, and it's actually your decision as a committee to decide whether if it's going forward. That's what's important here.
Should we answer, any more answer on that one, Ashley? No. Okay. Councillor,
I think it's a question around this point again. Given that this is a transformation fund thing, and Kay mentioned it's an invest to save, perhaps some clarity around what kind of savings we're looking to make. And also, just another point, I imagine that giving you the timeline of 18 months ago, that would have been that would have been made by the cabinet member at the time. Just confirmation of that, please.
I can give you an idea of the sort of quantum we're talking about in terms of how significant £100,000 a year investment is relative to the costs of homes for children that are taking place now. So we have more than 50 children and young people who we are supporting, whose annual cost of their home is more than £100,000. So there are more than 50 whose homes are already costing us more than £100,000. So by working with the regional care cooperative, if we were able to find a cheaper home for just some of them, the return on that investment could be quite significant.
thank you, Ashley. Any more questions?
Quite interested to hear what Kay has to say on that, please.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought just a further point that might assist you further. So when I talked to you about the business case that's to be outlined in regards to any build of residential homes by the regional care cooperative, I think what's really important to say in that regard, and I think it is referenced in the paper, is that regional care cooperative is government directed, but also when it comes to any future grants that are available to local authorities for capital build in regards to investment in children's residential homes, the government are very clear that local authorities cannot make direct applications for any funds to do so. It has to go through a regional care cooperative arrangement.
Thank you, Kay.
I'm sold on the concept. I'm just conscious that other members will be keen that this decision is made properly, and I get entirely that that officers see that it is. So that there is a couple of grey areas flagged up on the basis that it was a decision 18 months ago under a cabinet system with a cabinet member, and since then we have had not only a change of personnel but also a change of system. So that's the only thing that sort of, it's not irking me as such, but I'm aware of that being an issue, and I think that needs to be clarified at some point. I don't think it needs to be clarified for me ahead of this decision, but I think it needs to be clarified perhaps to members that why it doesn't need to go to PFR after this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Okay.
I'm just aware that we haven't actually got a recommendation or a motion on the table yet, which is fine. That's within the committee's gift and the chair. I don't know if, and I don't want to throw a fellow officer under the bus, but I don't know if there's any suggestions of amendments to what might be a potential motion coming forward that might be adapted to give the assurance that the committee might be asking for, that is comfortable with the director that's obviously trying to deal with the matter from his side. That's a negotiation that's happened. I can't help with that. I'm not a finance officer, but if the committee are looking for assurance and Ashley can give a change to perhaps the recommendation that gives the committee some assurance, I'm sure we can work this through and come up with something that's agreeable for all. But that's not within my gift, but that's perhaps a suggestion of a way forward, Chair. Just my suggestion.
Ashley, would
Well, the recommendation is the committee delegates authority to the Strategic Director of Children's Services and the Section 151 officer. I'll be happy to add anything that would make you comfortable to that with that, Councillor Blake. So we could add the Chief Executive regarding your comment earlier about change of personnel. We could add, I mean, I would take it as read that the senior council officers would make sure that we adhered to any internal processes. We wouldn't act without making sure it had gone through something, but if we want to add something to the effect of and in accordance with the current council decision-making governance structure or something like that, I'd be entirely happy with that.
Thank you, Ashley. I think there's no, so Hayward.
I just wanted to add the point that as well as to scrutinise, we are also here to support and enable the officers to work effectively. And I feel like, from my point of view, we've had a good display of the background, robust working practices to put this forward. So I, for one, would be happy to move forward to a vote on it, so we can.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So I'm going to read out the recommendations. And there are two parts to the recommendations. So I'll read the first one and then we can vote on it, unless there are any changes. So that the committee delegate authority to the Strategic Director for Children's Services and the Section 151 officer to approve the council's membership of the South East Regional Care Cooperative, RCC, delivered through Home and Future Limited, H&F. Yeah, so I'm going to take a vote on that. All in favour? All in favour?
Yeah.
And
second recommendation.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Kat. And then the second recommendation, approve the award of £200,000 of funding to H&F to contribute towards its establishment and delivery costs over the period 2026-27 to 2027-28, with the funding profile set at £100,000 in 2026-27 and £100,000 in 27-28 as part of an overarching funding agreement, OFA, enabling the organisation to deliver the functions required by the Department of Education for regional care cooperative across the South East. So can I have a show of hands, please?
Chair, before that, if I may, the director indicated he was making an argument for a lower sum of money. And do you think that is, before we get to that vote, do you think that is a possibility? Because that affects, I'm being pedantic, but it does affect the wording of this.
I don't think it's a possibility, no. I've been down that route extensively and I've had a.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would seek to amend it to have up to rather than just a blanket. But if you do not think that's a possibility, then I won't seek that amendment. Thank you, Chair.
So no changes to the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor. Take a vote on that. Show of hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favour?
All in favour?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, if you don't mind, I think it's time for a small adjournment. If we can say 10 minutes, you could be back at just before 7:10, please. Thank you. Call the meeting to order. Thank you. We're going on to the next part of the agenda, which is expansion of specialist SEND places. And I'm just going to see if I know who that's going to be. It's going to be Jade. Thank you.
Thank you, yes. So the purpose of this report is to note the outcome to statutory consultations, which were undertaken to expand our number of special educational needs provision on the island. The one of those was to create a new resource provision at the Bay Church of England School on the secondary site in Sandown. And the second was to expand Medina House School into a satellite site by an additional 36 places. And that would be taking the overall number of places at Medina House School to 208. The Bay expansion is proposed from this September and Medina House is for next September. The reason we brought forward the consultation for Medina House now is to allow, if approved, a large building project which would enable those places to be provided, and to allow us to plan that provision for a whole year, due to the lead-in for that. There was no objections received to those consultations. There was a number of consultation events undertaken with staff and with parents, and the only questions raised were through the diocese around financial aspects. They required some further clarity, and from staff wanting more information at Medina House around what that provision will look like, and some suggestions that they made in terms of how we could potentially approve that. So this report is essentially seeking authority, noting those outcomes and seeking authority to proceed with both of those consultations.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any questions from the committee? No, thank you. I'll read the recommendations out. It's two parts. That the committee approves the following increases in specialist education places for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. First one, expansion of Medina House School from 168 places to 204, with 36 places being provided at a satellite provision located at the former site of Barton Primary School, planned for September 2027. Can I have a proposer? Garrett. And is there a seconder, please? Any abstentions? Oh, yeah, go. Beg your pardon. Okay. So those for? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you. And so the second part of the recommendation is the creation of a new 8-place resource provision RP at the Bay Church of England School secondary site, planned for September 2026. Can I have a proposer?
I'll again propose that, Chair.
Sorry?
I will again propose it.
Okay. And a seconder? Councillor Newton, yes. And can I have a show of hands, please?
In favour.
All in favour. Thank you. So we're getting there. 40 past. Okay. So the next agenda is E, and that's school place planning. And Ashley, thank you. You're going to give the report. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report which relates to a wide range of matters for children ranging from early years through schools, and also children who have special education needs and disabilities. So if we just look at the recommendations, there are a number, but I'd like to draw your attention to a few of them. So the first one is about agreeing that reducing the number of school places on the island, which may mean school closures, is a critical and urgent priority. So this is the matter which has come to this committee and previous governance structures through the cabinet system, scrutiny, etc., for some years on the island. So this is not new, although it's clearly new to this committee, but it's a matter which has been a high priority topic amongst anyone who cares about island education for some years. And actually appended to the report, you'll see a one-page summary of a meeting that relates, of a meeting that was held with head teachers last November. And that's a one-page summary which has been agreed with island head teachers so that you can see what they think about this matter. The second recommendation is about asking officers to undertake a review of school place sufficiency in response to these declining pupil numbers. And the third one says that we should do that review and come back to this committee in the autumn, which would, I think, be the 15th of October meeting, with that report, which would give you the bullet points in there, an analysis of current projected surplus capacity, a proposed approach, and a proposed framework. I would also like to draw your attention to recommendation E, which delegates authority to myself to procure and appoint an individual or small team to support the strategic review. This relates very much to the fact that this is a significant piece of work. And when you're looking to deliver transformation, you need to invest in that transformation to make sure that it's high quality and that it happens. It's not realistic to add things of this quantum onto people's day jobs because they're already working, as Councillor Garrett alluded to earlier, above and beyond. And due to the size of this piece of work, we would need to bring in additional capacity to deliver it to a high standard. This also reflects a lot of the feedback we've had relating to the process which ran in calendar years 24 and 25, where some of the feedback was not just about making sure that we have capacity to deliver a high quality process, but it was also about bringing some independence to it, so that all stakeholders can be assured that this is the recommendations are being drawn, are being put forward in a way that includes independent scrutiny of that. So I'd also, so I'd like to just draw your attention to those specific recommendations, although there are more of them. If we just have a quick look at the report, I'd like to just go through 4 tables, and I hope that Councillor Garrett approves of the way that this data has been presented. Table 1 shows all the primary school children at the moment on the island. And you can see that in year 6, if you add up all the year 6 children across all the island schools, we have 1,349 children on roll. If you look at how many children there are in reception, there were 1,033. And that is a function of mainly the decline in the birth rate on the island, therefore a reduction in the numbers of children who require a mainstream primary school place. So that is more than 300 difference between the current reception year and the current year 6. If we look at table 2, what table 2 shows you is what does this look like at the moment for children entering the system in September 2026. So after the school summer holidays, which are about to happen, what's going to happen in September? So if you add up all the reception places that were available on the island at the moment, there were 1,289. If you look at how many applications there are from children, there are just over 1,000. So that means that the difference is 286. And the report refers to the challenges that sort of difference between the numbers of potential places and actual children entering school delivers for schools in terms of their budgets. So if we go on to that and we look at the financial situation in table 3, you will see that of the 31 maintained primary schools we have on the island, at the end of last financial year, at the end of March, 10 of them were in debt. So not just having a negative in-year cash flow, of which there were 16, but actually in debt. So that means they've exhausted their reserves, and essentially what's happening is the council is financing those schools off its balance sheet, its own balance sheet. And you can see that these are forecasts based on schools' forecasts, so not our forecasts, they're the schools' forecasts for what will happen this financial year and next financial year. And you can see that the schools reporting that they will be an in-year deficit in the next 2 financial years, including this one, goes up 19 this year and 21. So this is a function of the numbers of children in the system, because schools are funded on a per child basis. So income is going down as the numbers of children goes down. And table 4 is the education outcomes that we have on the island for the last 2 complete academic years. And broadly what you'll see there is that outcomes at the end of early years relative to national look pretty positive, actually. We'd like them to be higher, but they're looking pretty positive. Lawrence is the guru on all this data. However, when you move into primary school and secondary school, what you'll see is that the performance on the island relative to national deteriorates. It's important to say that a lot of island children do absolutely brilliantly. They thrive, they excel, and it was really interesting to hear what Jenny from the Parent Care Reform said about quality of life and the importance of that. But a lot of island children go to school, they thrive, they excel academically, and they go on to do brilliantly well in a whole range of careers. What we're talking about here is on average what happens. And on average what happens is that as children go through the primary and secondary school system, our outcomes are an increasingly big discount to the national average. And that is what we are here to do to change over the coming years. If you ask school leaders, what is the relationship between the financial resilience in my school and the financial situation in my school and my ability to invest in improved outcomes, they will say there's a very, very big link between the two things. If you don't have a robust financial platform on which to build, you're not able to invest in the resources you need to improve workforce development, training, additional resources, expertise, etc. And so that is the link between education outcomes and financial resilience. So happy to answer any questions on that. But it's essentially what we're asking for is your support to go away, do a piece of work, including with some independence, so bring in some other expertise and capacity into that team, and come back to you in October with a detailed report about how we address this significant gap in the numbers of places we have on the island compared to the number of children.
Thank you, Ashley. Any questions?
I just wanted to kind of frame the question that I think, you know, what we've heard from a number of different individuals is the shared interest in driving up the quality of education on the island, which came out in some of the responses. And I think one of the phrases that was used was following the evidence, which is why I would absolutely support this, because this is about gathering robust and independent evidence in order to inform decision making. One question I had was around what planning or intended planning was being put in place to look around talent retention in these different measures, because obviously we have existing and potential talent in the educational system on the island, and I wanted to understand what had historically been done and what would be done as part of this report, of this evidence gathering, in order to inform their decision making.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So I think that it's helpful to talk about a children's workforce rather than talking about the different elements of that. So we talk a lot about, we are one directorate. So some people work in children's social care, the youth justice service or special educational needs, but actually we're all one directorate, we're one team. We're one council team. We have to work with housing, adult social care, legal, finance, etc. But we're also one island team. There are huge numbers of people who work in the community voluntary sector, schools, early years, colleges, all coming to work every day to improve the life chances and experiences of children, young people and their families. So I think it's positive that we talk about a children's workforce on the island. Now, the link of that to your question is that when I went to meet all island head teachers 2 weeks ago up at the college, and I spoke to head teachers about this point, we agreed that if we could do that and think about the workforce holistically, whilst it is the case that schools in some cases are reducing their workforce, there are other opportunities for people to develop career pathways in related but different fields. So I'll give you an example outside special education needs and education. We have got some brilliant colleagues who work in children's social care who have joined over recent years the apprentice social work scheme and have brought with them a huge amount of relevant experience and passion for working with children and families and understanding of the island context from the education system, and they've applied it to a growth area which is social care. So we can do it, and it is done. And I think that a social worker that has a background in education is fantastic because they bring that complementary work. And actually, what that's helped with is not just retain that talent, but it's allowed us to reduce the number of agency social workers we have. 2.5 years ago, we had 33 agency social workers. We have to have a certain number of social workers to deliver our statutory duties. We now have 13, and I'm confident that will continue to decrease. So there are opportunities for people with really great experience and skills related to children and families to move into a different area. So we talked earlier also about the expert at hand thing. So there will be opportunities around educational psychology assistants or retraining as educational psychologists, same with speech and language, same with occupational therapy, but also specialist roles within special educational needs and disabilities. So Jane's just been talking about the expansion of specialist places. There are opportunities for colleagues, if they are in a mainstream school, which is reducing headcount, which is a decision that's taken by the head teacher and the governors in terms of balancing their budget, that there will be opportunities for those people to consider where else they could remain within the children's workforce, but in a different specialism. And what I've said that I will do as a result of that meeting with head teachers, I will be writing to all schools before the end of term to make that point to them, to say to them that, you know, this is something which we would like to, we'd like colleagues to be aware of, because I believe there are opportunities for people to remain within the children's workforce. We have to be realistic about this, though, that it's complex because across the school system, there are lots of different employers. So, for example, sometimes the council is the employer, sometimes the diocese is the employer, and sometimes it's the multi-academy trust. So our ability to control what happens with that workforce, with schools having individual accountability for their budgets and their planning around workforce and children, we will try and influence that, but it's not within our gift to control it. So I think we're back to the role of the local authority as a system leader, about being transparent and encouraging people to collaborate on these sorts of topics. And I think if we do that, we will be able to retain the great colleagues we have working within the school system, within, if it's not within schools, within another bit of the system. Because it won't just be the council recruiting, it'll also be the NHS recruiting, for example, into these roles, or special schools resulting in recruiting into these roles, or whatever.
Thank you, Ashley. Is there any other questions? Councillor Bell?
Do you want to take the committee questions first?
Sorry?
Take committee questions first.
Okay. Sorry, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I can explore the third bullet point under C in the recommendations and then D. Both refer to development of criteria for if a pathway is chosen to close schools, the schools. It strikes me slightly that D is redundant if it's captured in C. So I'd like to explore how D would be in practice. Does this, I'm sure this is not the director going off into a quiet and slightly darkened room, but actually to find a way to engage with all the stakeholders who we all know who those people are. And in answering how that, if we give that a delegated authority, what representations has, through you, Chair, the Director received so far from those with interest in this, particularly head teachers, on what this paper is proposing? Because certainly some of this, that's what I've heard from elsewhere, is that there still seems to be a disconnect between this building and the head teachers involved. So what can you help me out with on that?
So if there is still a disconnect, I'd be keen to understand the detail of that. So the reason that we've included the one-page summary from head teachers from the November meeting is we wanted to be clear with everybody about what was the collective view of the school community. That has been agreed with the head teacher community. So I think that the paper aligns with the sentiments in that. An example would be the point about independence. An example would be the need to bring in additional capacity to get this right. So if that's not the case, then please do, either yourself or whoever it is, please get in contact. If we look at paragraphs 31, 32 and 33, what that does, it goes through some of the criteria that have been used in the past to make decisions. And what I'd say about 33 is that these are new ones that have come up relatively recently. So the first one under 33, it says matters arising in the February white paper, Every Child Achieving and Thriving, such as the role of schools as a community anchor. So under the recent education reforms, there is an expectation that schools play a bigger role in their community and for their families than just what happens behind the school gate between 9 and 3 during term time. They are expected to be community anchors. And I think that is something we need to consider. If we were to design a school system on the island, where actually would we want schools to be located relative to where people live? What are the needs of those local populations? How do we understand the needs of place in a detailed way, and what role can schools play? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is about deprivation. So a loud and clear message we had from several people around this was that we need to make sure that in our areas of most deprivation on the island, we must have a laser focused vision for what high quality education must be like in those communities, because arguably it's those communities where education plays the biggest role in impacting children's life chances. And so it could be that when we if we are supported to go and do this, and we go away not to sit in a dark room, but actually to put together a diverse group of people, which Jade will be leading on, which would include parents and carers, their voices. It would include the voices of children and young people. I'd be delighted if people from this committee were involved in it, and representatives, for example, of the school community, that they may choose to include that element around deprivation in any kind of weighting in terms of how schools were identified. I think the other thing you'll see in the one pager from head teachers is around being realistic about how much can be done at one time. And that came through loud and clear as well. And I hope that is recognised by yourselves in what head teachers have said. Because these are things which head teachers are having to deal with and manage every single day. I heard we had a workshop relating to the SEND reforms actually with a lot of head teachers down in the Riverside Centre just after half term. And I was struck by one of the head teachers who said that he's a primary school head teacher. And in year 6, one of the challenges he has is that less than 40% of the children in year 6 have actually been in his school the whole time through. So one of the consequences of having a school with lots and lots of space is that children tend to move around a lot. And that means that the consistency of their education journey is not very consistent. And, he's having to deal with that all the time. Children arriving, they've been taught in a different way, in a different school, having to get them used to the systems and processes and way of teaching in his school. And that's an additional challenge. So all of these things will be impacting on the outcomes that children are reaching when they leave primary school, for example. But I do hope the paper reflects what school leaders say, and if it doesn't, I'd like to know the detail.
Thank you, Ashley. If there are no more committee members, Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I will conclude this questioning with that proposal onto the recommendations as well, actually. But before that, I think it'd be proficient just to have a bit of a sit rep on where we are and how we got here. Obviously, a couple of years ago, this decision came to this council and ultimately decided it couldn't make a decision bar one school. And a lot of the public anguish was actually centered around how that decision had come about. There was secrecy in their eyes, and you have to remember, perception is reality in these situations, that around the matrix and how schools were physically selected out. And certainly it struck some as being politically motivated in the absence of that information. Whether it was or not, we will never know. There is an exodus of talent from our schools because teachers are under relentless pressure to deliver in circumstances that, quite frankly, are undeliverable in. You've got a budget that's ever decreasing, more and more demand, particularly put through the fact that more and more children are now having to or requesting a EHCP, which puts more pressure back onto the schools. That is, in some cases, symptomatic of an underperforming school. We have got younger and younger teachers as a demographic whole have more and more pressure put on them as experience leaves, because quite frankly there's better things to do, and I don't blame them. We've got a declining amount, or a declining results coming out of our children, which needs to be corrected. And I think that is the most salient point. We are doing this because we need to correct outcomes for children. And Ashley makes a very good point that this doesn't mean that every single child on the island is automatically at a disadvantage because they've lost some kind of lottery and been born on the island. In some cases, they've thrived because of that. However, as a whole, we are letting down our children in comparative to the rest of the country. So what have we done about it? Well, since that decision, I think a letter went to government from the chair of this committee previously to say, we need more money. Either we need to be not spending so much, or we need to be getting more in. And the getting more in was ignored. I don't think we actually ever got a proper response back to that question. I'm looking at Ashley for some kind of confirmation on that. I don't think we ever did. So there's going to be no more money. There is no realization that delivering education on the island is exceptional. There's no exceptional circumstances given to the island as a whole, but in this scenario, children, delivery for schools, being a rural area, being a coastal rural area, has challenges which are not being respected by government. So we are left with the option of make savings in order to give better outcomes. And the only way to do that is to make cuts to the amount of provision that we are wasting because it is not being utilised. None of us want to close a school. I mean, my school, the primary school I went to, was closed shortly after I left. No one wants to repeat that. But if we're going to be making negligent decisions by not doing this, that is far worse, because you are actively saying that you had a chance to make outcomes for children better and you declined that. Therefore, this proposal is the only decision that we can make. It might not be a decision that we want to make. It might not be a very palatable decision, but that's the reason we are here. We are here as Isle of Wight councillors to make decisions that are better for the island. Yes, we are local representatives. Yes, we are representing our ward residents, but ultimately we've been sent here to deliver strategic change and oversight to this island. And this is the beginning of that within this issue. I would like to make a couple of suggestions and amendments to the recommendations, to which I'll then propose. Following on from Councillor Garrett's comments around C and D, I think an addition to D would correct that by just saying at the end of pathway chosen and make that public. Yeah, that needs to go out. Whatever matrix or criteria we're using, we make that public. I mean, we have spoken, it hasn't muted in informal briefings, that do we do this decision blind? Do we have a list of criteria and a list of school A, school B, school D, and make the decision blind? But I won't make that recommendation, but it's something this committee ought to probably think about, is the methodology that we use moving forward in order to make this a proper strategic decision rather than letting our heads rule our hearts, which is a very, very difficult position to be putting ourselves into. I'd also then like to make a slight alteration to point E, in that this having independent scrutiny over this, I think, is key for the public. We don't want a repeat situation where we have hundreds, literally, of parents in this chamber or outside the door saying this decision has been made without proper scrutiny. And I think independent scrutiny to that is key. So in order to give this a little bit of decision making back to this committee, can we change it from delegates authority to asks the strategic director of children's services to procure, delete and appoint an individual or small team to support the strategic review, ensuring that appropriate capacity, expertise is secured to inform form analysis, options appraisals and recommendations to then be appointed by this committee. I think that would give some reassurance back to the people out there that we're representing, that we have had some input into this in terms of transparency. We are making this as transparent as possible because no one wants their school closed. And if the overwhelming response from parents last time was, if I knew why, I could understand. I might not agree, but I can understand. And I think that would go some way to giving that transparency. So I'd like to propose those two amendments and look for a second.
Sorry, Councillor Blake, can I just check with that second one? It was to change delegates authority to ask. To
ask the strategic director, and then removal of the words and appoint after procure, and then to be appointed by this committee.
Okay.
Or to then be appointed by this committee.
Can I just ask a question about the practicality of that? Because I think that's a really good idea. I'd love that to be the case. Just a timing thing, because if we have to come back to committee to do that, this committee isn't meeting again until the middle of September, and we'd hope to be able to get at least some of that work underway before that. So I wonder, is it possible to agree something via email or something with the committee, or does it actually have to come back to a committee for formal approval?
I think there's something, I'd be up for something, or through you, Chair, I'd be up for something along those lines that can give practical sense to this, because obviously we're increasingly aware that you guys are under more and more pressure on this, so we don't want to give you less time. So through you, Chair, I'd be happy to do that through and maybe some kind of press release around how that's been accrued or something like that.
I do have a little issue with the governance on that. I think the power either rests with the committee or it rests with the director. And trying to go for a hybrid of that suggestion wouldn't be appropriate under governance. What might be would be, and again, I suspect the committee might not be in agreement with this, would be that any decision that Ashley makes is in consultation with the chair. Now, obviously, you can discuss with the chair about what is going on between Ashley and the chair and have input into that. And obviously, I'm sure your chair will be open and transparent and has heard your words, Councillor Blake. But that I would suggest would be the way forward, owing to the pressures on the timescales that the director has indicated. That's my suggestion, not a proposal that would have to come from the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I support that wording. So if on that basis, as long as my seconder's willing to accept that, yeah, I'd like to propose that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware we probably haven't formally moved these recommendations yet. Is that the situation?
A proposal has been forward and it has been seconded. So at the moment we have Councillor Blake's motion as amended on the floor.
He is moving the recommendation as with amendments. Okay, in which case I would like to suggest an amendment, if I may, to D. So currently it says delegates authority to the Strategic Director of Children's Services to develop the criteria to be used. I think that should be rephrased to develop the criteria to be considered for use. And with the intention being that would be, those criteria would be finally agreed by this committee. It's to just give some concreteness to the idea that it is this committee that will ultimately be agreeing those criteria. So at the moment it sounds like a rather concrete sort of they will be used rather than to be considered for use. Maybe I'm being overly pedantic on that point, but I think that would bring me some comfort. And certainly there's later in the paper, of course, around how people are brought together to develop the whole methodology around things. But I would move that we have those words for consideration.
I'd be willing to accept that amendment if that doesn't affect the timeline. So just double checking with Mr. Whittaker whether that decision was due to come back to this committee.
You can always use an EGM, remember, if you need.
So I think what would work is if we could come back in at the September meeting with the criteria, and then on the back of that, we can, if it's approved or tweaked, we can then use that to develop a proposal for the October paper, which would be the 15th of October.
Between October to September to October.
And that's a reasonable time frame.
I'm just trying to be helpful. I think an EGM would be, you could call an EGM earlier to help them through that process, because that doesn't sound like enough time for what you're wanting to do from my position. And as a former chair, I would say that you would have to use an EGM to try and keep you online if that's the process that you decide to use. Sorry, Chair, I've stepped in.
Sorry, I took so long. Okay.
So
Can I just add something? I think we need to be really mindful about appropriate consultation and allowing time frame within that to allow that. We don't want to rush any processes, and so by bringing back to September and then October in terms of the time frame that publishing reports and the lead into that, my view is that is a very tight timetable, and it wouldn't allow for meaningful consultation.
Thank you. Any more quick questions from the committee. And sorry,
So we need to decide on the,
are we going through recommendations now?
well, no, so has it been, it's been proposed and seconded that I was going to say, sorry, councillor Garrett's amendment to the amendment.
Well, I hope that is acceptable. I'm a little uncertain as to what is being said about the timetable. There's either a timetable that's running to October, which is satisfactory, or it's a timetable that's not long enough. Could you clarify what steps are in this process, which, bearing in mind any consultation of things relating to schools is very difficult over the school holiday period, which I would have thought otherwise does give the time to develop criteria for consideration by this committee in September, but which this committee could then take out to further consultation. Any development of criteria, I would expect to have some form of soft consultation in any case.
So in terms of time frame, I think if there is an understanding that in making that recommendation, we are suggesting that if approved between now and October, we would take that away through under Ashley's leadership and work with those various parties to develop that criteria and bring back to October committee for approval. It wouldn't be to take forward in terms of October as to how we were going to develop that. So essentially we would be doing all of that consultation between now or at the end of this period, developing that with the different parties and then bringing that back as a firm recommendation to then take forward alongside everything, all of the other information that we have suggested that we would bring back to that committee.
For you, Chair, would it be sufficient then to rather than September, we aim for the October, but we're involved within that consultation? I think, well, particularly around members questioning would be things like weighting of and things like that, as well as the actual criteria definites. So would that be more acceptable? So rather than having to consult until September and then come back, whether that would be more acceptable in terms of time frame?
So am I correct in thinking your suggestion is, I think as Ashley said, that actually committee members would be welcome to form part of that working party to develop that criteria between now and October so that there is involvement, and then it's just established at that point?
Yeah,
that's our suggestion.
Again, through you, Chair, just, I mean, yes, because I think obviously this decision has to then pass this committee, and the more approval we can get from this committee leading up to that decision, the more functional we're going to be in order to deliver that in a reasonable time.
I think the time is running on now, so I'm not really going to have any more questions on that. Is that okay, Kat?
Yep. So sorry, what we're being agreed for the recommendations, because I've sort of got a bit lost and confused in all of this.
There are two amendments being put forward, and I feel like both of which are being agreed with. We've just discussed the second one in D, right? So it's D. The wording in D, which I believe has been agreed to, and we've just discussed the underpinnings of that in relation to timeframe. So my understanding is we are notionally agreeing to both of those two amendments.
I was just going to say, Councillor Blake additionally originally said about making the criteria that might come forward public. But obviously, with the amendment that's now come forward from Councillor Garrett, it will be public by default because it's going to come back to this committee. So that wouldn't need to apply because it's going to happen by default because of the other recommendation that's now come forward. So we'll need to work with that because obviously you've just knocked one part out. But I think we will understand hopefully where we are now. And I'm very conscious of the time. So
I believe this committee has an understanding of where we are, and the wording we can sort out after this for time frame.
So with the change in the recommendations,
So we'll just do all of the whole thing.
just the whole thing again?
Yeah, we don't need to go through each. No, we'll just,
Okay.
with the agreed changes.
With the agreed changes, then can I have a proposer to the change of recommendation?
He's proposed a second bit, so I'll just move to that.
Thank you. And can I have a show of hands?
All in agreement.
All in agreement. Thank you.
It's going to be the chair's discretion as to whether we can get through the last couple of items within 5 minutes. I would suggest, as a matter of caution, that a vote is taken.
If I may move under procedural 9, 4.54 of the Constitution, that we extend our meeting by up to 15 minutes from the planned closure time to enable the business to be concluded efficiently and effectively. I shall move that.
And that must be supported by more than half of the committee, Chair. So you need to take a vote on that and then get support from half of the committee.
Can I have a vote on that to extend by 15 minutes?
Thank you.
Okay, thank Okay. Thank you. So we're now going to go on to item F, the holiday activities and food health programme annual report, and I believe that is Lawrence, is it? Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce the Holiday Activities and Food Annual Programme Annual Report for 2025-2026. This report highlights another successful year of delivery across the Isle of Wight, providing free holiday activities, healthy meals and enriching experiences for children eligible for benefits-related free school meals. During the year, the programme offered over 10,600 places, reached more than 2,200 children on the island, and was delivered through 22 providers across 38 venues in every community on the island. Key developments in this last year include the introduction of a centralised booking system, and just picking up on what Councillor Garrett said about data, it's now produced kind of like some very in-depth, very accurate data for us, and automated as well. So it's been a good boon to kind of showing the impact of the programme itself. We've also further expanded the SEND provision, our specialist SEND provision, and increased support for discretionary places for priority groups that we've identified. The report also demonstrates the wider value of HAF in improving children's health and well-being, reducing inequalities, supporting families during school holidays, and strengthening community partnerships. It is clear that the programme continues to make a meaningful difference to many island families during school holidays. Whilst tonight's report focuses on the annual delivery and performance of the HAF programme as requested by DFE, it's quite a narrow selection of data that we're asked to produce. Members should note that a more detailed assessment of holiday childcare sufficiency, demand, accessibility and future development will be considered as part of the next childcare sufficiency assessment, which comes before the committee next spring. This will provide a broader strategic picture of school-age childcare, which is a new responsibility that the Department of Education has given the local authority over the past year. I'm also pleased to inform you that the HAF Summer 2026 programme is now being launched. It was opened on the 23rd of June for bookings. We've now received we've now had 70% of the places already booked for the summer, and we've still got another 3 weeks to go. So bookings are looking very good. It is our biggest kind of programme ever, with the most wide-ranging range of activities that we're able to provide for children and young people on the island. We look forward to coming back to you with more details on the programme next year on this. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lawrence. Is there any questions? Let me have a minute. Is there two hands up?
Councillor Garrett.
Oh,
It's just
Councillor
me, Chair. I seem to be on one tonight. This is one of those reports that we both should feel very good about. but it should also appall us, shouldn't it? When I was a school kid back in the early 1980s, I was on free school meals. And yet here we are, some years later, still providing services for people who are in intense poverty times. And so, yes, it is great that we are doing this work, but it is one of the reasons why, as we develop our new corporate plan, I shall be pushing for the same priority that I pushed for under the previous administration, which was adopted, that the tackling poverty, for want of a better phrase, should be an overarching priority and remain an overarching priority for this authority. Because why is it now, 26 years into the 21st century, that we still have people in such levels of poverty that we have to provide meals for in these circumstances? It is good that we do. It is right that as a society that we do these things to help people. But why are we in a situation where we do still have to do that? So possibly hearing my voice, it is something I'm deeply passionate about. And I hope that all colleagues, all parties and none will be pushing for that as well, that tackling poverty remains an overarching priority for this authority. Thank you very much.
Councillor Garrett, any other questions? Just note that then.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all noted. Thank you. Right. Okay. So the final agenda part is number 8, committee work plan. To receive the committee work plan. Does anybody have any comments on the work plan? Councillor Blake?
Chair, I'm just reading through the work plan. I just note that we have nothing at the moment timetabled for the October meeting. So just wondering if there's anything that we can bump up the list at all, but looking upon it, most of it is annual reports, but I'm just looking for officers to see if there is anything that we can sort of bring up to give ourselves some more decision-making time, maybe later on in the year to that. Though I'm sure we can find something for October in the meantime.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Ashley, any comment on that?
I think that it might also be helpful to have plenty of time on the October meeting to talk about the school place planning item. So it might be beneficial not to have too many other things in October to allow for that. I think in September at the moment we've just got those 4 items, so I think that's doable within the September meeting, I think.
Thank you, Ashley.
I was just going to add, obviously from previous reports, we're also going to add on, there'll be a school place planning item in September. There will be one in October, and the family first update will come in this. There's not one in October?
No, not in September.
Not in September now. Okay. Okay. And family first update in December. Is there anything else I'm missing from officers that I don't think I'd heard that any other updates are coming? No. So I will add those on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming this evening and being kind to me. Thank you to all the officers, especially Ashley. I've got to meet all the lovely other officers very soon, so I'm looking forward to that. But I'd like to say a special thank you to Ashley for all your help and support that you've given me since joining about 9 weeks ago, I think. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you all.